We're on a mission to feed the future by helping farmers worldwide be more resilient, more productive, more sustainable for generations to come. Corteva Agriscience. Keep growing.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Welcome to this edition of RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. And, well, if it's Thursday, that means it's time for the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Corteva Crop Protection. We've got a great lineup today. We're going to start in Ontario with Mark Maclean, and then head down to Dresden, Ontario with Phil Shaw. We will hop to Manitoba to talk to Tyler Bartmanovich, and then we'll end up in Alberta with Sarah Weigum. And then at the end of the show, stick around. We're going to talk to Jason Smith with Corteva Crop Protection about herbicides. And I'm going to ask him what's the number one thing he wants farmers to remember or to prioritize this year before getting the crop on the ground. And I'm pretty excited about the conversation. We're going to talk about planning for herbicides, not just this year, but in the years to come, because frankly, that's kind of how it works, isn't it? All right. If you've got feedback on today's show, or as you're listening to all the stories from our farmers from across Canada sharing what's happening, if you'd like to be interviewed for the Farmer Rapid Fire, drop me a line, lsmith@realagriculture.com. Would love to add you to the list. Now, if you're perhaps a bit shy, or, maybe you think you've got a really good idea for a neighbor who should be on said program, you can nominate them as well. Don't worry. We check in, make sure they're okay with it before we randomly start calling them. I promise. Also, we're very nice. Let them know. Okay, you can also send feedback to 1-855-776-6147. And of course, find us across social media at Real Agriculture. All right, let's get to it. We're going to head first here in Ontario. We're going to Port Albert to talk to Mark Maclean. All right, we head now to near Port Albert, Ontario, which I have no idea where that is, but we're talking with Mark Maclean. Mark, how are you?
I'm good. It's the west coast of Ontario. It's almost like Miami, but different.
Okay, so close, but different. But not different at all. Okay, now, are you in one of those areas that has been absolutely hammered by snow this winter?
Yeah, we had lots of snow. The infamous Highway 21 that was closed more than it was open. Mm-hmm. And actually we had a really good snowfall in parts of it a couple days ago that, some people might say it should have been closed one more time, but we had a really good melt, and we haven't had a lot of rain here this spring, but the snow has got away and things are starting to ramp up.
Oh, you lucky duck. Now, okay, here we are, beginning of April. I keep hoping that it is going to warm up for the parts of Ontario that I'm from. How behind on time average do you figure your area is at for, say, average planting date?
We're probably still on schedule, I would say here. One thing is, I would say we're probably everybody, including myself, would be we're not in high gear yet. Like usually this time we're trying to get some 28 out on wheat. We're trying to get something moving. It's been cold. The wind's been relentless. Like I say, the other night, parts of here got like 6 to 8, maybe 10 inches of snow. Mm-hmm. And it's melting today, but it's going to be a little while getting rid of that. Where we specifically are, we missed most of it. There's a bit of snow under the trees, but just from the other night. But other than that, I'm gearing up right now today and tomorrow for maybe doing a little test and tune on the sprayer. We'll see what ground conditions are, but the corn planter's ready, the cultivator's ready, some ground tillage is ready, but long-range forecast really isn't not showing a lot of heat in the forecast, and it hasn't been warm to get outside to really do anything and feel like doing anything. So I would say our attitudes behind schedule, but our calendar's saying we're kind of still on schedule.
Okay. That's a really optimistic way of looking at it, because I would be much more complainy. Because I am much more complaining about it. And you know what? I have no right to be. It really is perhaps, as you say, probably more average. But we do need some heat. For it to stay on track.
No heat.
Yeah.
We got snow so early there wasn't much frost. And if you did have frost, it wasn't long leaving. And the wheat's kind of greened up, but it hasn't really taken off. So, and like I say, it's more that every day we haven't had a 15-degree day outside where you really feel like it. And if we do, the next day is usually a complete disaster with snow and crappy weather and wind. And so like I say, our attitudes are telling us that we're behind, but I think by the calendar we're probably pretty well on par if the weather breaks.
Mm-hmm. Now, it does sound like you're quite ready, which is quite good. So you've got the planter gone through already. You're going to look at the sprayer. Do you feel like equipment-wise you're on track to where you want to be, or what's on the list this week?
So the cell phones, technology, social media are great reminders to us. And, you go through the pictures from last year, you go through pictures, Facebook tells you what you were doing, 5 years ago. And I would say, like, we are honestly a touch behind where I normally would be, and by those pictures, but the equipment's ready. Didn't really do a lot of changing on planting equipment and stuff this year. So, I mean, with what's going on south of the border and different stuff where a majority of our equipment would come from, it's kind of hard to make plans like that. So we're just kind of going with the status quo. And I would say 2025 is going to be a KISS program year. We're going to keep it simple and really not get too crazy out of the box as far as equipment goes, or maybe even cropping goes. It's going to be a pretty status quo year.
Mm-hmm. Are you, and I don't want to talk about global markets right now because I don't want to depress everyone. But in line with, say, equipment, parts, etc., so far, how are you feeling about availability, prices, that sort of stuff? What are you hearing as far as movement and availability might go?
Well, really the situation seems to be kind of stagnant. And I think with the erraticness of everything, nobody really knows what's going on. Manufacturers, salespeople, anybody really doesn't know what's going to happen. So it's a day-to-day wake up and find out kind of deal. And I would say that's where everybody's just sitting, watching, and wondering that nobody really knows what the actual answer is. So if you don't know, you just kind of carry on. And as far as the markets go, I think they're in a don't know situation as well. And traders will trade and away things go. But I don't know whether it'll be another month before we kind of get some direction on what'll happen or what. And I guess we got an election looming at some point. Is that correct?
You know what? The rumor has it that sometime around the end of April we have a federal election. So yes,
I must say I don't mind when we have another election there a month ago or 2 months ago. Wintertime is a great time for an election because there's one thing that I really hate. It's election signs. And as much as I don't like going outside, you can tell by the lack of election signs that those people don't like going outside either.
Yeah, that's right. We did. We had a provincial election here in Ontario not long ago. And now we are very lucky, Mark, to have 2 elections in like 2 months. They just really want to know how we feel about things. We're very important people.
I'm sure they do.
That's exactly right. I will say, on the election sign front, up until probably 2 days ago, 3 days ago maybe, there really weren't that many up. And I think maybe you're right. Maybe people who put up signs don't like poor weather either, and so they have all stayed home. But it did seem to change.
The less election signs that go up are the less that we'll have to pull out of the bush in the ditch at some point this year.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, some candidates I think are much more responsible when it comes to cleaning up their signs than others.
That's true.
Yeah, that is very true. All right. Okay, my question this week is, and it sounds like you've been busy maybe doing some of them, what is your favorite springtime chore? It's a chore, it has to get done, but it still makes you happy because it means it's spring and off you go.
It's maybe one of the, the first lawn cutting of the year, when the lawn wars really pick up. I guess that would be one of the things that it's warm enough out. You're probably still wearing a sweater. It's something that has to get done. You pick the sticks, you kind of rake the gravel, and that's just the beginning of a new thing, yes. A new era, a new season, a new year. That's usually a good kickoff, a good touch. We're a ways away from that yet. We're still got a lot more relocated gravel to get back in the driveways, but that would be one of my favorites, would be to get back on the grass, not necessarily the land, but the grass.
Mm-hmm. That is
to make things look good again.
Yeah, it is a very satisfying mow, that first one.
Us in the cropping and the chicken business, we don't have too many fences to fix.
Right. Tell me about it. Although I will say, probably out of that whole mix, I don't mind picking up sticks because it usually means you can have a bonfire. But the gravel, the having to put all the gravel back, I got to tell you, a good snow clearing operator really does pay their way. So just putting it out there.
Or a lot of investment in cement or asphalt would be another good one.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a lot to move around. I'm surprised you didn't say cleaning up after the dogs when the snow melts. But anyway, which may also have to happen before the first mow of the year. Anyway, I think that's a great idea. We're probably we're at least a month out from here. But maybe you'll be sooner. Who knows?
Maybe. Well, we always hope. We always hope to be. If you're not first, you're last. Isn't that the story?
Something like that. Also, I should hope where you are will be warmer than I am, but you never know. Okay.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Mark, have a wonderful week. Thanks for joining me here on the Farmer Rapid Fire.
Thanks, Lyndsey.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come back and we'll head down to Dresden, Ontario to talk to Phil Shaw. I want to know, just like I'm asking all the farmers today, what is your favorite spring chore? Drop me a line, lsmith@realagriculture.com. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this today. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with more right after this.
We got some exciting news. We have a new episode of the Pest and Predators podcast that's going to be starting here very shortly. Joined right now to chat all about it, the University of Alberta PhD student, Rachel Pazante. We've been doing the Pest and Predator podcast for a number of years now, but from your perspective, how would you explain it to the listener?
This is a chance for researchers to share their research, what they've been working on, with a broader audience and with the people who might actually benefit from the research.
What does the audience have to look forward to in season 6 of Pest and Predators?
Well, my episode, we're going to talk about hoverflies, as well as other beneficial insects that live in field borders surrounding canola fields.
It's kind of fascinating because we talk a lot about getting inside the canopy, and we talk a lot about beneficials. And I think a lot of times we think about the crop, think about the pest, we don't necessarily think about the whole ecosystem. That's the Pest and Predator podcast, powered by WGRF. Those episodes are going to be coming out here very shortly. We'll be talking about them here on RealAgriculture.com.
Every seed starts a story at Alliance Seed. A seed holds the promise of successful harvest each year. From the first day of planting, as your crop grows and navigates the challenges of weather, to the final load from the last field, it all begins with the seed you choose. Trust Alliance Seed to guide your choices by providing the expertise and information needed to match the right seed to your farm's unique potential. Start your success story with cereal and pulse varieties by visiting allianceseed.com.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is the Farmer Rapid Fire here on April 10th, brought to you by Corteva Crop Protection. Joining me now from near Dresden, Ontario, it's Phil Shaw. Phil, what's keeping you busy today?
I'm just getting ready for the Detroit Pistons. They're in the playoffs for the first time in years.
You know what? The Ottawa Senators, which is a hockey team, I know you don't follow it, but they clinched their playoff spot yesterday. So we're all winning.
That's good.
We're all winning today.
We're all winning, and I know you're a big basketball fan anyway, so I knew you need to know that.
Huge. Yeah. I watched some highlights, so that's a thing. No, that is exciting. Now, does that mean you're all caught up with everything you need to have done and ready for the farm?
Well, down here in the deep southwest of Ontario, it's still, it's unusually cold and wet. I know you up in the Ottawa area, I think you had snow yesterday or something. So
still have it.
I think that for mostly southern Ontario, we've been a little bit colder than wetter than usual, so it's hardly started down here. And generally speaking, we usually would get at it a little sooner than later down here, and so we're just gonna have to wait for maybe some warmer weather and for side dressing wheat and getting ready to start planting corn, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. When would be your typical average start date?
Well, it's generally later on in April. We like to plant corn. I think that date has got earlier throughout the years. Mm-hmm. I once had a conversation with Peter Johnson about that, and I said, well, why don't we plant in March? And, he said, obviously, there's limitations to it, but because you always have to worry about getting froze out a little bit later in June. But typically around April 25th, that's a nice time to plant corn. Okay. Wheat is side dressed with nitrogen way before that, and a lot of people, they put double shots of nitrogen on. It seems to be quite an art in managing your wheat these days. So, but generally speaking, this time of year, you usually get some good days. We haven't had too many. Haven't had too many lately.
Yeah, that does seem to be the sense, and you're right. Here in the eastern part of the province, we're probably we're used to being behind, but it does feel even more behind, right? Because we seem to be stuck in this kind of cold, as you said, cold, wet, just not. It's not making me happy.
You had snow.
I'll be honest.
Yeah, that's right. Right. So hopefully things will turn around.
Yeah, let's hope. One of the places we can look for that, silver lining is the global markets lately, and it's a bloodbath, Phil. And I know you follow the grain markets. How has the Ontario, like the corn and soybean side? How interesting or how not interesting has that been for the last little while with all these tariffs?
Well, as you know, in your network, RealAgriculture always does a good job of covering it really well. The new presidency has really given us challenge with regard to new tariffs. And I heard this afternoon that they'd actually, Mr. Trump had put a 90-day pause on the tariffs he announced the other day. So, it's uncertainty, and that's tough. With regard to grain markets, we've had volatility in futures, and I think we're all used to that. And depending on what these tariffs are when they finally come in, it might affect the grain trade in Ontario. Like, for instance, a few weeks ago when the Americans put tariffs on European steel and aluminum, the Europeans responded by putting tariffs on American grain into the EU. And we already export Ontario corn and soybeans and Quebec Ontario corn and soybeans into the EU. We have preferential status through CETA. So believe it or not, this latest tariff move by the Americans on the EU, that actually might open things up for us. And it's going to be a good thing for cash markets in Ontario and Quebec. It's just kind of one of those unintended circumstances that might have happened. So that's a good thing. But as you surely covered on Real Agriculture, this tariff talk, and not only tariff talk, but tariff reality has been pretty tough, especially on the soybean futures market. And so, Ontario producers have to balance between futures market variations and the value of the Canadian dollar and basis appreciation. So, like I say, there might be new opportunities into Europe for exports that we couldn't have ever imagined before because of the conflict between the EU and Europe. But it's more of the same. And I know it's going to be a challenge for you in the next 90 days to cover what our American friends are going to be doing with regard to tariffs. But it's certainly made for some uneven times.
That may be the understatement of the week. But Phil, I think that does speak to exactly that. As you mentioned, the volatility is the only certainty right now. But you've hit on something interesting that I think so many are trying to sort out. And of course, our Western friends on the canola front dealing with tariffs and changes there. But as you mentioned, that amidst all this, there may be these shining moments of potential for some changes to Canada's advantage. I just hope it's enough that overall it's positive. I just don't know if it's going to be enough.
I hope you're right, because, I think you are right. It's hard to, we are grasping at straws. I think the canola situation has improved from a few weeks ago, but of course there's still Chinese tariffs on meal and oil, canola meal and oil, and that's a problem. The toothpaste is out of the bag. Toothpaste is out of the tube. The eggs have been cracked and made into an omelet. You can't put them back, and it's just, it's certain uncertainty. And like I say, there might be some things like I'm talking about Ontario and Quebec, corn and soybeans that might be able to get into Europe a little bit better now, and that's always good for a place to put some of our Eastern Canadian grain. And I also understand that the soybean basis levels in Western Canada for soybeans are about $4 a bushel, which is unheard of for our friends in Manitoba and Saskatchewan that grow soybeans and ship them out to Vancouver and different places like that. And it's all because of tariff action between the Americans and the Chinese with regard to soybeans. So, that's unusual, and I know canola works better than soybeans in most of Western Canada, but that's an unusual thing, and it's partly happened because of this certain uncertainty or these tariffs that we're having placed on us. So it's difficult, Lyndsey, to really tell what's going to happen, because one thing we haven't talked about, and I don't expect to talk about it necessarily, but grain fundamentals are not, we've got oversupply, but there's certainly potential this year for things to go sideways if the weather isn't kind to us.
That's right. Actually, Phil, it was sort of my next question was, Ontario for the most part, a 3-crop rotation, and corn and soybeans at times will swap acres depending on what the market tells you, but also, as you mentioned, what the weather does. Within the last few weeks anyway, I think anecdotally anyway, a lot of the farmers I talked to, it seemed to be more of a corn-heavy year. Do you still see that? Is some of that shifting, or how do you see the breakdown of potentially moving between crops, depending on what the weather does?
Typically in Ontario, it does depend on the weather. Like, for instance, if we get a wide open spring, we'll probably have 2.1 million acres of corn and maybe 3 million acres of soybeans. We have 1.1 million acres of wheat now. Those acres are somewhat finite in Ontario, so, they don't change a lot. It usually depends how much wheat is left over. Yeah. So they don't tend to change a lot. The soybean market is in a bit of a panic now because of what our American friends and our Chinese friends are doing to each other with regard to tariffs. So there's some thought in the United States, we're going to grow more corn like the USDA said in their last report. But there's some thought now, because we're not planting really much yet, that there might be a lot less soybeans, that they say, simply because the corn market seems to be slightly more robust than soybeans now. And the only way that'll translate into Ontario is if it continues to be wet and cold and miserable to get corn in. You will have a shift into soybeans. But typically that usually only depends when it's really, really bad. I would expect 2.1 million acres of corn, even more than that if we get a really good go. And that's always a challenge because, as you know, it costs a lot more to plant corn than it does soybeans, and the risks are much higher. So it's a little bit more of a leap of faith. So I'm not telling you. The answer is I don't know, but those are some of the factors that will affect that going forward.
Spoken like a true analyst there, Phil. All right, my question of the week, while I still have you here, it will one day warm up, and that means springtime chores. So I'm asking everyone, what's your favorite springtime chore? Still a chore, still a job that has to get done, but which one is your favorite to get done in the spring?
The way I always say it, and I guess I don't have too many favorite springtime chores, but I always say it takes forever to get ready to plant. But the first 100 acres that you plant, that's when you can relax. When you hit the auto steer button, and you can just relax. That's the way I look at springtime chores. It would be a lot better if you could just go ahead and do it. I suppose one of the most pleasant springtime chores or tasks that I do is assess the wheat crop. And it's especially pleasant on a nice spring warm day when the wheat is greened up and it looks like it's going to be okay. That would probably be one of the most pleasant things I'm able to do. Sometimes it's not okay.
That is true.
But this year it looks okay, so that's a good thing.
Good. Yes, absolutely. Okay. That is an excellent answer. I also love to scout a crop. Okay, Phil, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and you enjoy your Ottawa Senators, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Corteva Crop Protection, and then we'll hop to Manitoba right after this.
Right now, people in agriculture and food are facing challenges that can feel overwhelming. If you need to talk, access the National Farm Crisis Line at 1-866-FARMS-01. That's 1-866-327-6701. It's 24/7 confidential help when you need it. Farm Credit Canada also has tools to support your long-term mental health. Learn more and access the crisis line at fcc.ca/wellness.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com, the Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
Through a growing storm of kochia, cleavers, chickweed, and more, there's a clear path. Introducing Oxbow, a versatile cereal broadleaf herbicide that gets the job done. Powered by Duplisan technology, Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. With flexibility in timing, rates, and recropping options, your path is clear. Find your way on the path of least resistance at newfarm.ca/Oxbow.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Thursday, April 10th, and that means it is time for the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Corteva Crop Protection. Joining me now on the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Corteva Biologicals, it's Tyler Bartmanovich out of McDonald, Manitoba. Where is McDonald, Manitoba, Tyler?
McDonald is an RM just bordering south side of Winnipeg.
Everything's in relation to Winnipeg in Manitoba.
Yeah.
So now remind everybody following along on their radios, what is it you do on your farm? What keeps you busy?
We're just grain and oilseed farm, so that's basically what keeps us busy this time of year. Yeah, right now we're just finishing up, going through the drill and the air cart to get ready for spring and hauling some grain while we still can. So, yeah, just getting everything ready and just wait for the weather to allow us to get going.
Mm-hmm. The calm before the storm, if you will.
Not so calm though.
Yeah, you guys have had just wild swings in weather the past little while.
Yeah, it's been early warm up, but I'm just rushing to get things done. Maybe a little bit ahead of schedule because we might be seeding ahead of schedule. So That's okay. Yeah,
that would be okay. When is your typical seeding date start? When do you figure you should?
Well, there's no typical here, but usually it's either the last week of April or the first week of May, roughly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And
so
it might be early this year, you're thinking. Maybe.
Might be a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah.
Maybe, mind you, the 8th, the 9th. So, yeah, maybe earlier in the third week of April, I could see us going. Because the water's all disappeared, snow's gone.
So I guess that's the one question. I mean, yes, a late frost always a risk in Manitoba, but really it's about being able to get on the fields, that the soil's fit. Are you in a pretty good spot for soil moisture? I mean, Manitoba typically has extra, if not. But to be dry now or dried out by now, is that average or on the dry side?
You know what? I wouldn't say we're on the dry side. We had a decent amount of snow this winter. We did have some moisture in the fall, so I think we're in good shape. I'm not I'm not too worried about not having enough moisture yet, because that can change pretty fast in our area. So
yes,
I'd rather it be a little bit drier in spring so everything can go in and not get mudded into the ground.
Yeah, it's no good.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now you did say you've been hauling some grain. How did the winter season go for grain movement for you?
Pretty good, I would say. We're just had a couple contracts that were still haven't gotten them hauled yet, and they were March. Well, yeah, we have a couple March contracts that still haven't moved. So, but I think that's kind of typical, unfortunately, for everyone. Although, yeah, most stuff has been delivered on time or ahead of schedule, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, some of those contracts that didn't move, did they give you reasons for that? Was it a railway issue?
Usually just do with they're not getting their trains when they're supposed to, and then when their elevator's full, then can't haul grain. So only they would pay us when their contract is late, right? Mm-hmm. They like to have it both ways.
It is true. Yes. It's like, hey, could you hold that for me? No, I'm not going to pay you to hold that for me. But could you hold that for me?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. There is a reason, everyone, that especially Western Canadian farmers have a lot more storage on farm than many of their Eastern counterparts. Yeah. It happens a lot. Okay. So now, grain and oil seeds, as you said, what's all in the crop lineup for 2025?
Pretty much normal for us, which is wheat, oats, canola, and soybeans.
Okay. Which one are you most excited about?
I don't know. I like them all. They all have their different qualities to them. But I guess if I had to choose one, I'd probably say wheat. To me, it's the nicest crop to combine and grow.
Mm-hmm. Then which one's your least favorite?
Tell me what the market will do, and I'll pick.
There you go. The one that doesn't pay you as well. That would be a good choice. Yeah. What has the oat market been doing? That's one of those ones that can definitely shoot higher, but also can get oversupplied. So what has that been doing?
Yeah. You know what? We haven't grown oats the last couple of years, so we're back into it this year.
Oh, cool.
But I think that the oat market, I mean, it's generally a pretty lame market compared to canola or soybeans or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty
not so much of a global market. And you have lots of people who go into them, come out of them, whether they're growing them or not. And millers also really don't like to pay more money than they have to. So, not one of those exciting markets that you can have limit down in one day.
Yeah.
It's pretty boring that way.
That's for sure. I'm asking everybody this week, what is your favorite springtime chore? Now, it's still a chore. It's still a job that needs to be done, but done in the spring and maybe still enjoyable. Which one is it? What favorite springtime chore?
I think everyone's got to say draining water, right?
That is an excellent answer.
Whether you're doing it with a pump or an excavator or your rubber boots, I mean, one of those kind of tasks that, makes you feel kind of like a kid again, but at the same time, it can also be a very annoying task because sometimes you wish you were doing other things instead of draining water.
Yes. I personally still love creating rivers and moving water, and it is pretty darn important, as much as sometimes it feels like a bit of a waste of time. It is pretty important. So that is a fantastic answer. I still enjoy doing that. I do that too. So not just for kids, you guys. It's for us grown-ups too. Absolutely. All right. Tyler, thank you so much for joining me here on the Farmer Rapid Fire. I appreciate it. I hope you get that a bit of a dry spell, and then it'll rain. Wait till the crop's in the ground.
That's always the plan, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Take care. Thanks so much, Tyler. All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Find everything you need for outstanding weed control in your wheat and barley from the cross-spectrum herbicide experts at Corteva. Corteva is proud to offer a wide selection of cross-spectrum herbicides for maximum convenience, effective resistance management, and customized control of your toughest grassy and broadleaf weeds. No matter what kind of weed challenges you're experiencing, we've got the right fit for your farm. Visit corteva.ca to learn more.
At Vaterstad, we aim to be the world's leading partner for outstanding emergence. We're doing that through innovative tillage, planting, and seeding equipment that's optimized for your field conditions and soil types. We also offer industry-leading capacities to help you get the job done in shorter windows of time. It's all designed to give your crop the best start possible so you can maximize yields. Vaterstad, we look forward to growing together.
RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it is the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Corteva Crop Protection. Cross-spectrum herbicides from Corteva. Checking all the boxes for cereal growers, cross-spectrum herbicides deliver grass and broadleaf weed control in a powerful all-in-one solution. Learn more at corteva.ca. All right, joining me now here on the Farmer Rapid Fire, it's Sarah Weigum from Three Hills, Alberta. Sarah, I would imagine it's a very busy week, so thanks for taking time out of your week. What's keeping you busy?
Yeah, we are doing a variety of things. It's still that sort of transition period between wrapping up winter projects and moving on to spring sales and seeding plans. So, we loaded out some customers this morning so far, and we're picking rocks on some land we broke last fall, and just getting everything in place to hit the field here hopefully by the end of the month.
Rock picking. Always what is it? It builds character? Is that what it does?
Something. I hope so, because I don't really know what else I am doing it for other than character and not wrecking my equipment.
That's right. Nobody wants to pick up a stone at harvest. So there you go. Now, remind everyone, what sort of seed do you grow? What crops do you grow there on your farm?
Sure. We produce pedigreed wheat, barley, flax, soybeans, peas, and we grow some canola for cash crop, and sometimes we grow perennial forage seed too.
Okay. And what forage would that be? Like rye, or what is it?
Like grass seed, so intermediate wheatgrass.
Oh, okay. Cool. People who don't buy grass seed would probably be surprised to learn how many kinds of grass seed there is.
Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, if you are up in the Peace country of Alberta or BC, that's definitely something they specialize in, but there's a few of us scattered around who grow some grass seed, coming to a ditch near you.
Yep. There you go. Very important. All right. Okay. So as you mentioned, I kind of think, in talking to farmers, certainly, seeding is a really important time of year. But I feel like you've got an extra layer of busyness because you're, of course, also helping other farmers get their seed in the ground by getting everything in place. So how much of a logistics headache happens this time of year?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I'm, just in the middle of all that stuff. And sometimes someone says they're going to be there at 1:30 and 1:30 comes and goes and they're still not there. And you're like, should I move on with my life or should I just wait? Are they still coming? Yes. So, we have lots of good help around the farm. So really there's more than enough people to get everything done. It's sometimes, I understand you say you're going to go to the elevator and drop a load of grain off and then pick the seed up on the way home and you think you've got it all planned out and then you run into a snafu somewhere along the way. So it's the unpredictability. My customers are pretty good at calling ahead, but, you can never control exactly what's going to happen once you're on your way.
Yep, absolutely. Now, being a seed grower, and that, of course, I'm going to imagine means field selection and the actual seeding pass is perhaps more complicated than for the average farmer. What does it take as far as the planning process for crop rotations when you're going to grow a seed lot?
Yeah, so we're always looking, first of all, a couple years ahead of what we think people might want to buy 2 years from now. So we're planting stock seed and, multiply that up for a year or two and then retail it. For field selection, we try to have 2 years of broadleaf if we're going to switch from one type of cereal to another, just to make sure all of the volunteers, or at least almost all of them, are grown out and not going to cause a contamination issue in our crop. And we can grow back-to-back pedigreed crops. So I can grow, a certified Copeland barley, uncertified Copeland barley. So we often do that, although, lots of people wouldn't agronomically recommend back-to-back cereal production. At least we know that the field's clean. We know what the history is. So we have a couple different ways of working around those issues.
Yeah, that's actually, I never thought about that. There's there's the agronomic rotation thing, but you really do have to think about the contamination of a different variety potentially of a same species. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's way more complicated then.
Lots of rules and regulations to read through if you have time on your hands in the winter.
Okay. I will put it to bedside reading. All of the rules that go into growing certified seed. But thank you for doing it, because we need detail-oriented people who are willing to do these things.
It's definitely I don't know, there's a lot of character traits that make a good farmer, but definitely detail-oriented is a good one for seed production.
I would think so, yes. Now, you did mention, quite a list, including forage seed potentially. Of the other crops you grow, which one's your favorite? And they won't know, so you can just pick one.
They won't know.
Yeah, that's right.
I like to grow, I don't know, I like to grow them all. I like to grow fall rye because it's a little bit different. So we've got a different planting and harvest window, and there's some really good benefits to fall rye. And it brings a bit of a different clientele through our door, just people looking for something different. So I always like talking to new people, and that's kind of nice thing about growing rye. And I like to combine barley, even though it's itchy. It looks very mesmerizing to watch it going into the combine header.
It is very mesmerizing. I would agree. Yes, but itchy. So anyone who's never grown it, you're welcome. Somebody else does it for you. Yeah, there you go. So you can enjoy your beers, etc. Now I'm asking everyone because, of course, as you mentioned, hopefully by end of April we'll all be rolling or very close to it, or ready to go at least once the soil's fit and ready to go. But of course, there's lots of chores that have to get done in the spring, and I'm asking everybody, what is your favorite springtime chore? So still a chore, still has to get done, but maybe you don't mind so much that it's your favorite springtime chore.
I was going to change my sprayer tires back to the fat ones.
Nice.
The reason being is we share a sprayer with my neighbor, and so we stays at his place all winter, and we see each other a lot during the growing season as we're always swapping back and forth who's using it, but we don't see each other as much during the winter, so changing tires is kind of like a chance to catch up on what's been going on over the winter.
Like a working lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's a fantastic idea. And it's practical. You're getting something done, but you get your visitor.
It's got to be done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I love it. Okay. And then, here we are. We'll be middle of the month before we know it. What does next week hold? What's next on the agenda?
Between now and seeding?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess just keep on, we got to get those sprayer tires changed pretty soon here and keep selling seed and distributing seed. Probably have to run down south to get some stock seed for ourselves. So we'll be making a few road miles. I've got one load of canola that's supposed to go here this month. So just lots of odds and ends until we kind of get a little more singularly focused.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me here on the Farmer Rapid Fire. I really do appreciate it. I know it's been really busy days, so thank you for taking the time and sharing what's happening this week in Three Hills.
Okay, thanks, Lyndsey. Have a good one.
It's time for our last break, and I'll be back with Jason Smith of Corteva Crop Protection right after this. If you're applying a low-rate N stabilizer, you might be falling for a losing strategy. Low-rate products promise great results, but may lack the potency of higher active ingredient concentrations, so great isn't always what you get. Don't put yield at risk. Put your trust in proven solutions. Anvol Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Thursday, April 10th, and of course, yes, we are here for the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Corteva Crop Protection. And joining me now is Jason Smith, no relation, well, maybe way back. He's the Portfolio Marketing Manager, Herbicides, Western Canada for Corteva. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Happy to be here.
All right. We are going to talk about herbicides because that's your jam. But we're going to talk about herbicides in a bit of a different way than perhaps most people think about them. We're going to think about this year, next year, the year after. Why?
Absolutely. Well, because as I was telling you in our preamble, that's kind of the somewhat bipolar notion of Jason's existence, where I live in 2025, but then start to think of 26 and 27 and 28 and beyond, looking at new herbicide concepts, new molecules, new ideas, right? So that's really where I live and spend a lot of my time.
Now, the exciting part of, say, new molecules is one that would get us very excited. But that one I don't think comes across nearly as often as perhaps the first part of that, which is the new concepts, maybe new formulations, maybe new ways of using new products. So what are some of the things you're looking at there for this year, next year, years beyond, as far as, maybe some concepts?
So I would say all of the above, right? The new molecules are certainly further out because the time necessary to discover and characterize and register is significant, and the investment to do that is pretty lengthy. But yes, we do spend a lot of time playing with different combinations to look at pieces. So formulation is becoming more and more apparent, or more and more important. Sorry, we very much. I try to very much balance this idea of, hey, we want to have something that performs very well for a customer from a broad spectrum, dealing with problem weeds, but it's also got to be convenient to use because. Let's be honest, if you have the best herbicide in the world, but it comes in 4 different jugs and a massive case treats 20 acres, uptake on that one's probably not going to be really high. Customers don't really like that, right? So a lot of the stuff that we're looking at this year would be some formulation tweaks and improvements. And then the other piece would be, again, playing with some combinations to see if there's some ability to start to address some significant weed concerns for customers in Western Canada. And I would say the number one on my hit list continues to be kochia. Mm-hmm. Kochia is a growing concern and certainly something that consumes a lot of my time and energy and thought process.
I think that's because it consumes a lot of time and energy from the farmer's perspective. Yes. It's what is it about, from a herbicide perspective, what is it about kochia that makes it so difficult?
Well, I think what makes it so difficult is just its ability to adapt to herbicides, right? Like it's shown a remarkable resilience to be able to grow through herbicides. Back in the Stone Ages, the turn of the century, when I was in the field, all we had to deal with was group 2 resistant kochia. But in the 20 or so years since, it's developed a remarkable level of resistance to a number of herbicides. And certainly one of the things that we tend to do is go back to the well again and again, where, hey, if we have something that works quite well, we like to use it until we absolutely beat that horse dead, and then look for some other solutions. So certainly conversations I'm having with customers is, hey, be cognizant of the fact that the herbicide tools you have, you want to do everything you can to maximize those and ensure that you maintain those, because long term, there's probably not some magical mode of action, or certainly not a magical mode of action on the horizon that's going to come and save you.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us sort of full circle to the first part of our conversation, thinking about, formulations or different tactics, but also the molecule side. Obviously companies like Corteva are spending a lot of time and effort looking at new products, new molecules, new things to bring. But how rare is it to find something that is really new and remarkable that, plays a role in solving some of these issues?
Well, I think all we'd have to do is take a look at what are people bringing out that's new and novel from a mode of action or even from a new molecule standpoint, and see that those sorts of discoveries are trickling out every few years versus several per year, right? So, they are trickier to discover, they are trickier to characterize, they're much more expensive to develop. And, there has to be that ability to recoup that investment. So, I know the number that we've liked to talk about is somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million a day that Corteva invests into agricultural research across the vast array of what we do, which is a pretty significant amount of money. And certainly when I spend time with colleagues down in Indianapolis, where we have a lot of our R&D for herbicides, I get to see firsthand all of the work, all of the brain power, all of the passion that's going into doing that sort of work down there.
Mm-hmm. But it is as you mentioned, it's a heavy lift. That's for darn sure. There's a lot of work that goes into these products and finding new molecules or new ways to use them, which is super cool. Now, so we are on the cusp of a growing season. Herbicides, of course, a big one. If you had one piece of advice for farmers this spring when it comes to herbicide management, you only get one. What are you going to tell them?
Don't skip burn off.
Oh, I like it. Solid. Yeah. You didn't even hesitate, Jason.
Nope.
Don't skip it. Why?
Don't skip burn off. Because very few times I've ever seen anybody regret that. Regret doing the burn off.
Yep.
I would say there's a lot of times where they've regretted not doing the burn off, right? There's probably more weeds out in that field than you think. We don't see a lot of those small microannuals if we talk about them. And certainly if we've got some winter annual or early perennial type weeds, a burn off is absolutely critical. That helps get your crop off to the best start, ensures that it gets ahead of the weeds, and then typically that gives us a more efficacious in-crop treatment when we have a crop that is ready to compete with weeds that are at or below its leaf stage. And, the herbicide gives them a helping hand. One of the best tools that I think people underestimate on herbicide efficacy is a good competitive crop.
That's right. It's like another mode of action. There you
go.
Yep. All right. Absolutely. Okay, Jason, thank you so much for joining me here on the Farmer Rapid Fire.
All right. Thanks, Lyndsey. Appreciate it.
Well, that does it for another edition of Real Ag Radio and the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Corteva Crop Protection. Thank you to Sarah, to Tyler, to Mark, and to Phil, and of course to Jason for joining me on today's show. I'll be back for the Issues panel tomorrow. That's 4:30 Eastern, right here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM.